Greetings to you. My name is Tara Brabazon, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies at Charles Darwin University, and welcome to Outrider Lucky 13, Managing the Critics of Academics in the Media. Right, so this is our second instalment in the Ellen trilogy, and we're going to explore the relationship between academics disseminating their research and academics promoting their research. Now, this sort of weird binary opposition has been created. Promotion, bad. Dissemination, good. And like most binary oppositions, the discussion really is not as clean or as crisp as that. So when people read your outputs, it will enhance your profile as an author, full stop. But of course, the challenge with that, and this is not about the media, this is about academic life. Academic life is filled with jealousy and blame and shame and fear, all the bad stuff. And when I was a junior academic, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I would have these very, very senior academics sort of plop themselves into my office and complain that nobody was citing their work. Very, very senior people. No one's citing my work, Tara. No one's citing my work. And they used to do really uncomfortable things. And I'll use the word, they sort of begged that I would cite their research. So this is all a bit uncomfortable and all a bit yucky. It was a bit tragic, and it was a bit try-hard. And I think we can do better than that. We've got to think about authenticity in and of ourselves. I do understand the desperation, though, because think about it. You've configured a research plan, you've produced an outstanding piece of research, it's got through peer review, and yet it seems like nobody is reading it, and you're assuming that because nobody's citing it. Now, that's an incorrect jump, and we'll return to that in a second. But in the old days, 10 years ago, scholars used to get quite frustrated because nobody seemed to be citing their work. And of course, there wasn't a lot that they could do about it. An article reported famously in 2007 that, quote, 90% of academic articles are never cited. Now, that over-egged that omelette, and it was proven to be a bit ridiculous. But the article did, and that was the headline, right? But the article did demonstrate some statistics and some facts that made people a bit uncomfortable. So 1/3 of social science papers go uncited, 27% of science papers go uncited, and a massive 80% of humanities papers go uncited. But of course, that statistic in and of itself, again, is a flawed argument, a flawed proxy, because the really important, big, significant research in the humanities doesn't happen in refereed articles. It happens in singly authored scholarly monographs. Okay, and these citation rates are dependent on many variables, including the window of time on which one is checking on the citations. Do you want the citations in the first year, or 10 years, or 20 years? And of course, what counts as a citation? Noting that citation metrics are different from alt metrics. And of course, do self-citations count? But the major point, I think, being made here is that most research is not cited. And certainly most research is under-cited. Now, some of the under-citing may be caused because the work is poor. But that's probably not the case. More likely, the under-citation has emerged because in our busy, accelerated times, the academic author hasn't gone one step further and connected that research to an audience. Let me explain what's changed, colleagues. Right now, today, 5,000 academic articles are published every single day. So how will your article stand out? How will your article ever even be read? So 10 years ago, researchers couldn't do too much to promote or disseminate their own research because editors controlled a lot of the process, and you might be lucky and an editor would send the contents page around on news groups, remember those, or indeed through email lists. And, readers may be loyal to particular journals. But those times have gone. We've got open access, disintermediation, and a proliferation of research. And the old assumptions about research dissemination and audiences, they just don't work anymore. They don't work anymore. So, what can we all do now as academic authors? How can we be proactive? How can we get out there and mobilise some strategies so that our research can find a readership? Okay, so new times, new opportunities, new rules, cool. But the problem is that those same academics that used to beg us to cite them are not prepared to do the work to connect that research with a readership, with stakeholders, with citizens, with audiences. And as we talked about in the last Outrider, they express sort of enormous rage at those of us that are actually going out into the world and building connections and relationships and talking with actual people about our actual research. Now, much of this criticism about academics and the media, academics in the media, resonate around a truly bizarre index. Yes, another citation index. But this one is called, you need to hang on to yourself, this one is called the Kardashian Index. Yes, you heard correctly. This is a thing. I'm not making it up. So I'm going to talk about the Kardashian Index, what it is, why it exists, and why we need to fight this sort of movement. Because I'm also going to talk about the robust commentary and critiques that emerge against the Kardashian Index. And the reason I'm spending time with the critiques is if anybody has a good go at you for the work that you're doing in the media, I want to present to you the choreography of the commentary to answer back to these people, because times have changed. So let me use the great commentators who have really done the intellectual work to answer back to these people. Let's do this. So as you've worked out, the Kardashian Index is named after Kim Kardashian. So what is this index and what does it measure? Okay, you need to hang on to yourself. This is unbelievable, but it is a thing. This index particularly applies to science and to scientists, and it measures a discrepancy. It measures a gap between a scientist's publication record, particularly with regard to peer review citations, and a scientist's social media profile. Okay, so the Kardashian Index emerged in 2014. It was created by Neil Hall from the Centre of Genomic Research at the University of Liverpool. And he developed this concept because Neil believed that certain scientists, probably friends of his, certain scientists were just not receiving the respect and the esteem and the citations that they deserved, while all those pretenders, those underperformers on social media were gaining citations and profile. So he was very much of the belief that there are great scientists and there are pretenders spruiking their wares. And he stated that, quote, "I am concerned that a phenomena similar to Kim Kardashian may also exist in the scientific community." End of quote. Makes your eyes water, really, doesn't it? Yes. So there is obviously an equation to work out the Kardashian Index. It takes two variables: the followers that a scientist has on Twitter, so that's one of the variables, and the number of citations that they have on their peer-reviewed research. Okay, wow. So this is this is the K index, and it's created through a fraction. Obviously, the numerator of this fraction is the number of Twitter followers, and the denominator is the number of followers the researcher should have given their citations. I'm not making this up. This is a thing. So what this is all about, I reckon, is a scientist is calling out another scientist for spinning and selling and overblowing their research on Twitter, and then acknowledging that there are all these fantastic scientists that are just not being seen, not being engaged with. Now, is this real? Now, the first thing we need to recognise, and this is important, there are sort of influencer academics, people that have underperformed or not really performed at all and are doing this, right? So, for example, there is a bloke, Australian bloke too, that talks a great deal about PhDs and try and helps PhD students, and that's great, except that this guy was a postdoc. He co-supervised a couple of students with a really bad supervisor, and he hasn't published any research since 2017. Okay, so that's the example of the pretenders, the actual pretenders, because they don't have the qualifications or the experience or the expertise to be remotely talking about what they're talking about. So that's not really the point of this one. I understand, I know there are pretenders, fake people, I get that, but that's not what the Kardashian Index is measuring. So let me go through the critiques of the Kardashian Index. Firstly, and obviously, the entire premise of the K Index is that the citations granted to a scientist are a proxy for scientific value. Now, as we talked about in the wonderful Joanne trilogy, there is citation politics, so that's not an elegant proxy. Research that is desperately wrong, that's fraudulent, that's retracted, is cited. And also there is outstanding research that is not cited because gatekeepers of particular journals are closing in on their discipline, particular nationalities are undercited, and of course women are undercited. Okay, so the assumption that citations confirm intellectual value, that is incorrect. So let me just hammer out some quick critiques for you when assessing citations, right? The size of the field is important. So the larger the field, the more likely you are to be cited. So if you mention cancer, you've got a very good chance of being cited. If you're doing research on Cold Chisel's East album, you have less chance of being cited. Relevance is also an important variable. So let's keep with cancer. If you are researching lung cancer, big field, you've got a good chance of being cited. If you're researching cancer of the penis, that is rarer, so you'll be less cited. So as you can see, this isn't about quality being measured through citation. If you work in a small field, you will receive smaller citation rates. And we've got to remember, I keep on talking about this because seriously wrong research receives citations. So the Pons and Fleshman's cold fusion paper, famously from 1989, cited over 1,000 times, is the archetype of poor science. Right. So my second critique of the Kardashian Index is it lets an array of scientists off the hook. This is important. It suggests that not using social media is an option, and that social media is a bit tacky, a bit of a problem. And it works on the assumption that refereed academic articles are all that is required to be a credible scholar. But it's no longer 1993, it's no longer 2003, and academic citations are only one configuration of academic value, and that's why we have words like impact and engagement and esteem. We have discussed these terms because they're showing other ways of thinking about research value. So we also need to think about the incredible role of disseminating research. If you're interested in translational research, which supposedly everybody is at the moment, every grant you fill in, there's a box for translation. How the hell can you have translational research if you don't translate it between media sources? Seriously. We know academic citations are fine. I'm not knocking them. It's great. It's wonderful. But you also have to ask the question, right, well, who is the audience for your research? And as academics, intellectuals, scholars, researchers, whatever word you're comfortable with, we should have a commitment to the public and the public good, wherever we may find it. But instead of thinking about the now, the present, and all the new strategies and the new opportunities for dissemination, there's sort of this posh noblesse oblige looking down one's nose at social media. Now, this elitism, which is what it is, this elitism has a history. Popular culture has been demeaned and marginalised throughout its history. Think about Matthew Arnold's 1869 book, Culture and Anarchy. Think about that amazing title. So high culture gives us, quote unquote, sweetness and light, end of quote. But popular culture, low culture. mass culture, leads to drinking, laziness, and obviously revolution. So, this stuff from the Kardashian Index is restating ideologies from the last 200 years or so. High culture is safe and valuable and meaningful, and therefore refereed articles, because they're high culture, are verified and transparent and important. But actually, social media has its own literacies, its own rules, and its own genres, and it takes skills, a series of skills, to translate research into and for diverse audiences and through different interfaces and different platforms. Okay, so why would there be a correlation between social media and academic citations? Why would there be a correlation? Just like, why would there be a correlation between salami and a steering wheel? They're different things. So actually the K-index can reveal the exact opposite of what it was attempting to measure, that credible researchers, the cited researchers, haven't worked hard enough to find new audiences in and through social media. Interesting, isn't it? They are elitist and they're not working hard enough to move their research in and through diverse citizenship groups. Okay. Thirdly, the Kardashian Index has just a whiff, giggle, of academic jealousy. Always one of my favourite topics. Now, I've seen so much of this because I'm a 5'2" blonde woman, right? Okay, so I've seen so much of this through my 30-year academic career, where senior academics are just horrified that a junior colleague or even a PhD student is gaining attention on their research, with the silent statement also being, why are they getting all the attention? My research is so much better. Why aren't I getting the attention? Yeah, you got it. So the relationship between visibility and contribution is arbitrary and highly subjective. A fraction with two algebraic variables does not render it a science. As Katie Mack, an astrophysicist at the University of Melbourne, stated in her critique of the K-index, quote, "This paper suggests that only highly cited scientists deserve a large Twitter following and everybody else should shut up." End of quote. She was offended because she read this K-index stuff as a disrespect of scientists who are doing the hard work to try and connect with the public, build disciplinary literacy, and show the life of a scientist. And Katie Mack particularly argued that she was using Twitter to scaffold and mentor and model women moving into science. Seems a pretty good argument to me. And then, of course, there's the other critique, another feminist critique from Kate Clancy, who's an anthropologist at the University of Illinois. And she argues that the K-index, quote, punches at people with less power, and that makes it not funny. Ooh, end of quote. Yeah. So she logged the sexism in choosing Kim Kardashian as the site of unwarranted fame. And what she went on to show is that the K-index actually reveals that very few women on Twitter have an inflated Kardashian index. In fact, what she demonstrated is most of the people with a high Kardashian index are men. So as you can see, the feminist critique of the K-index is really punching pretty well. It's really ending this as being something of value. But I wanted to just present one more critique, because this is the important one, I think, for us moving forward. And this is from neuroscientist Mika Allen from the University College London, and went on the full attack and stated, and this is powerful, this. I actually have this written on my office desk at work. Quote, "It may not seem like it now, but in time it will be clear that what we do is just as much a part of the scientific process as those lofty nature papers." End of quote. Oh, wow. So the world is changing. Understand the change. Powerful argument. And remember, we need to grasp the profound hypocrisy of this right now, okay? Remember, nature is charging $11,000 to enact an open access journal. Already gone through peer review. $11,000 to render an article peer review. So how is the publisher, Springer Nature, how is the publisher able to get away with that behaviour, and yet the people using social media for free, they're the problem? Doesn't make sense, does it? Doesn't make sense. Fourthly, it is, I think, important to note the irony of Neil Hall's article. He put the word Kardashian in the title of his article so it would get noticed. And the ironies continue. Chris Woolston published an article in Nature on the Kardashian Index, and that article was assessed by Altmetrics. Pot, kettle, black. Finally, there is the disintermediation matter that I want us to take forward. Social media is changing the hierarchies of academic culture. Social media allows all sorts of academics to move outside of gatekeepers and find new audiences. Academic journals are consensual knowledge-generating systems, and the boundaries of those journals and our disciplines are patrolled and they're managed. There are insiders and there are outsiders. And in Outriders, we focus on the outsiders. And if you doubt me that there are patrolling activities around journals and disciplines, just have a look at the treatment of the ultra-realist criminologists in criminology and see what's happening to those remarkable scholars. But now there are hundreds of avenues for alternative pathways for academics to find new audiences. Twitter is a clear one. Threads may be its replacement. We don't know yet. But so is, for example, the creation of a video abstract. That is a new and important way to find new audiences. So, for the groups, the theorists, the researchers who are outside of the mainstream, who are rarely valued by the gatekeepers, then social media can provide alternative ways for you to redefine your life and find new academic audiences. And I do want to make the point that also social media are incredibly diverse. Now, people talk about the socials. That's nonsense, really. Instagram is different from Snapchat, which is different from YouTube, which is different from Pinterest, which is different from Facebook. And you see, those sort of complexities, the Kardashian Index is not measuring. You know, it's not measuring an academic with their butt out of a pair of pants, you know, on Instagram. It's measuring their discussion of research, right? So this is an important variable. And if Twitter is being critiqued, think about what Neil would do with TikTok. So when we start to think about the issue in this way, we really see the whole point of this thing is academic jealousy, and we need to be talking about that a lot more than we do. We see that this is about spotlight deprivation. We see that this is much more about why aren't I being talked about, rather than any commentary about science. And also remember, all this discussion has been about science. It's important to remember that there are disciplines called media and communication studies that actually take social media as their topic, as their area of investigation, just as a biologist would use a pipette. We can see the consequences, therefore, of not taking social media seriously, and the people who do the hard work in dissemination are being critiqued and marginalised to try and reinforce other researchers' ego. And that's a tragedy. Can I say there is another concept that I want to spend a lot of attention on, and that is attention inequality. That's what we need to be talking about, attention inequality. So what is clear is once we do start to receive some attention on our research, then it does cascade, and that's a great thing. So as doctoral students, hi, I know it's incredibly frustrating because you're just starting out and you've got like 150 friends on Twitter, right? And your research doesn't appear to be finding an audience. But commit now, start now, believe in yourself, believe in the process, and allow the research momentum in and through social media to be created. You are not being a Kardashian. You are being a public intellectual who is working hard to disseminate your research to diverse audiences. That is a great thing. We can all choose where our attention is placed, but our role as researchers is to improve the calibre of information that is available to the public. That's our job, that's our role, and the Kardashian Index tries to marginalise that focus for our future. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.